Here we are at our Google Classroom page. This is fourth block, so everybody's looks the same. I just keep it separated to be organized. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read to you our beginning of the Odyssey, okay? I would read the entire thing to you, but that would result in a very long video. So I'm going to break it up, okay? So we're going to start with, you go to the classwork page, you click on the Odyssey Part 1, Adventures of Odysseus, and you will click on this little PDF and it'll bring you up here. Now, I don't have an option to annotate on this one, so in order to really give you a full experience, I'm going to use an app I have on my computer to help out, okay? Alrighty, so that's where we are now. I'm going to zoom in. Alright, get comfortable. The Odyssey, Part 1, by Homer. Translated by Robert Fitzgerald. Now, first things first, anytime you see anything italicized before you begin reading, you need to take note of it and read it. Half the time, that is going to be a summary of what you're going to read. So it says, in the opening verses, Homer addresses the muse of epic poetry. He asks her help in the telling tale of Odysseus. Well, one thing I notice here is that it automatically tells us muse, and I see this little footnote. So down here, a muse is any one of the 9 goddesses of the arts, literature, and sciences. So I want you to think back to Hercules. Whenever those women were singing Zero to Hero, those were the muses. Not specifically, of course, because we don't know what they would look like, but that's what it was. It was inspiration, and we still use muses today. We will call someone our muse whenever we're going to write a song or a story or an artwork. So, before we begin though, I want to point out that this, and I know you're freaking out on me already, it looks a lot like poetry. It's not poetry. Well, it is poetry, but how we're going to read it is just like it's one long sentence. So we're going to read straight through. Follow along. Sing in me, muse, and through me tell the story of that man, skilled in all ways of contending, the wanderer, harried for years on end, after he plundered the stronghold on the proud height of Troy. All right, who is this talking about? It is talking about Odysseus. All of this is discussing who he is. I think I used that right. No, used it wrong. It's okay. We'll carry on. I'm going to create here, and then I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to delete it. There we go. Yeah, we'll ignore it for right now. But all of that was just talking about Odysseus. Check out right here at the end. You'll notice we don't get punctuation until the very bottom of it. Okay, I'll quit playing around with this in a moment. So that was just one big giant sentence, and it was introducing who our main character is. So out to the side, I'll be like, main character. For some reason, it's white. There we go. So let's continue downward. He saw the townlands and learned the minds of many distant men, and weathered many bitter nights and days, in his deep heart at sea, while he fought only to save his life, to bring his shipmates home. All right, so our question right here would be, what does this tell us about Odysseus? This talks about how his troubles at sea. So let's go back and look at some word choice that's here. Well, I make this smaller. What word choices tell us more about Odysseus or who his character is? So I'm going to highlight it right here. So he learned the minds of many distant men. What does that mean, to learn the minds of someone? He weathered many bitter nights and days. Weathered means like you went through a tough situation, but you survived. And in his deep heart at sea, he fought only to save his life, to bring his shipmates home. So think about some words that kind of automatically pop up into our minds. For me, that I'm going to add is that he sounds brave, courageous, strong-willed. Ah, wrong button. Where's the back button on this thing? You know what? We're almost done with this page, so it's okay. Yeah. Strong-willed and loyal. So that's what we get from just the first 3 sentences. There we go. Well, not even 3 sentences. That was just 1 sentence, wasn't it? All right, so now we're going to look at the next sentence. I'm going to make it green. But means we're going on to something different. But not by will nor valor could he save them, for their own recklessness destroyed them all. Children and fools they killed and feasted on. Ooh. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the next part of that sentence is on the next page, but I want to make sure we point out here. Who doomed everyone? But not by will nor valor could he save them. So even though he seemed like he was a strong, brave, courageous, and loyal man, he could not save his shipmates, for their own recklessness destroyed them all. Ooh, I love it. Okay, let's continue. Children and fools they killed and feasted on. Going back at the top. The cattle of Lord Helios, the sun, and he who moves all day through heaven took from their eyes the dawn of their return. Of these adventures, Muse, daughter of Zeus, tell us in our time, lift the great song again. So we learn specifically why and who they angered. Do you really think it's a smart decision to anger the god of the sun? We don't know specifically how it's been angered or he's been angered, but we will learn that soon. Remember, check out these footnotes. Anytime you see a footnote, they're really important. All right, so let's get on to the story. That was sort of like the hype up, the introduction, the previously on. So now let's dig in and find out what's going on. So this is sailing from Troy. 10 years after the Trojan War, Odysseus departs from the goddess Calypso's island. He arrives in Phoenicia, ruled by Alcyoneus. Alcyoneus offers a ship to Odysseus and asks him to tell of his adventures. Now this was the reply Odysseus made. All right, check out quotation marks. That means he's speaking. I am Laterus' son, Odysseus. End of sentence right there. That's his introduction. Remember, being someone's son was super important. Men hold me formidable for guile in peace and war. This fame has gone abroad to the sky's rim. All right, so guile. Ooh, so he is crafty and cunning. That is what he's talking about himself. So I'd be sure to make a note of that somewhere. I'm going to change this to blue. I'm not loving the red. Okay. hitting the button now. Text button. There we go. So Odysseus claims he is cunning. Whenever there's peace and wartime. So he's cunning all the time. This fame has gone abroad in the sky's rim. So that means he's famous. He's so famous he can touch the sky. My home is on the peaked seamark of Ithaca, under Mount Neon's wind-blown robe of leaves, in sight of other islands, Diclium, same, wooded Zychaeus, Ithaca being mostly lawfully in that coastal sea, and northwest, while the rest lie east and south. So that's all describing his home on Ithaca. What does it sound like? What kind of words is he using? Is it an ugly place? Is it a pretty place? Keep that in mind. A rocky isle, but good for a boy's training. I shall not see on earth a place more dear. Ooh. Though I have been detained long by Calypso, loveliest among the goddesses, who held me in her smooth caves to be her heart's delight. As Circe of Aea, the enchantress, desired me and detained me in her hall. Wait a second. That right there? Detained by Calypso? Loveliest among the goddesses? Held me in her smooth caves? Heart's delight? Circe desired him and detained him in her hall? Yes, that's right. These were his lovers. But he's married. I'll leave that. But in my heart I never gave consent. Aw, you still did it though. Where shall a man find sweetness to surpass his own home and his parents? In far lands he shall not, though he finds a house of gold. So even though he had goddesses going after him and things like that, he talked about his home and his parents. So no matter what, he is still in love with his home. But you didn't see him mentioning his wife anywhere in there. Just saying. In far lands he shall not, though he find a house of gold. What of my sailing then from Troy? What of those years of rough adventure weathered under Zeus? Alright, so we got a god mentioning Zeus. Zeus is pretty cool. The wind that carried west from Ilium brought me to Ismarius on the far shore, a strong point on the coast of Saconis. I stormed that place and killed men who fought. Okay, he sounds like a warrior. Plunder we took. We enslaved the women to make division, equal shares to all. But on the spot I told them, "Back quickly! Out to sea again!" My men were mutinous. Ooh, mutinous. What does this mean? What does this mean? Mutinous means rebellion, so that sounds just like how he started it. My men were mutinous, fools on stores of wine. Sheep after sheep they butchered by the surf, and shambling cattle feasting, while fugitives went inland, running to call arms to the main force of Saconis. So these fugitives, they went inland, running to call arms, to call for help from the main force. But his men are mutinous fools, still hanging out and drinking wine. This was an army, trained to fight on horseback, or where the ground required on foot. They came with dawn over the terrain like leaves and blades of spring. Doom appeared to us, dark word of Zeus for us, our evil days. My men stood up and made a fight of it, backed on the ships, with lances kept in play, from bright morning through the blaze of noon, holding our beach, though so far outnumbered. But when the sun passed toward the unyoking time, when the Achaeans one by one gave way, 6 benches were left empty in every ship. That evening when we pulled away from death. So we can tell this was not an even fight. This was not an easy fight for him, and it left 6 benches empty on every ship, making us know that there were heavy losses to Odysseus. And with this new grief we bore with us to sea. Our precious lives we had, but not our friends. No ship made sail next day until some shipmate had raised cry 3 times for each poor ghost unfleshed by the Ciconians on that field. All right, so whenever we have these big letters, that means we are moving on to a different part of it. So what I would like you to do for everything that you read, because we got to get this practice in so that we understand, is I want you to write a summary of what you've read. What you have read. There we go. And describe the characteristics you find about Odysseus. So you're going to ask yourself, based on these actions, who is Odysseus and what is he doing and what actions have taken place? All right, so going down to LotusEaters. Now Zeus, the Lord of Cloud, roused in the north a storm against the ships, driving veils of squall moved down like night on land and sea. So he's the Lord of the sky. He woke up a storm, and so now we know that he and his ships are on a huge storm out in the middle of the ocean. The bows went plunging at the gust. The sails cracked and lashed out strips in the wind. We saw death in that fury, dropped the yards, unshipped the oars, and pulled for the nearest lee. Means sheltered from the wind. Then 2 long days and nights we lay offshore, worn out and sick at heart, tasting our grief. But each one dwells there we go. Until a third dawn came with ringlets shining. Then we put up our mast, hailed sail, and rested, letting the steersman and the breeze take over. I might have made it home that time, but as I came around Malea, the current took me out to sea, and from the north a fresh gale drove me on, past Cerythia. 9 days I drifted on the teeming sea before the dangerous high winds. So there was a big old storm that happened. They were like, okay, Zeus did that one. And then he almost made it safely home, right there. But a current took him out to sea again. And they were left drifting for 9 days on the ocean. So now we're seeing that Odysseus isn't having a lot of luck. Not at all. So upon the 10th day, we came to the coastline of the LotusEaters, who live upon that flower. What kind of people could live upon a flower? That doesn't sound very like proteins. We landed there to take on water. All ships' companies mustered alongside for the midday meal. Then I set out, 2 men picked, and a runner. So he sent out 2 men and a runner, so 3 in total, to learn what race of men that land sustained. They fell in soon enough with the LotusEaters, who showed no will to do us harm, only offering the sweet lotus to our friends. But those who ate the honeyed plant, the lotus never cared to report nor to return. So anytime they would eat this plant, they would have no care at all in the world. They longed to stay forever, browsing on that native bloom, forgetful of their homeland. Oop, this is a big no-no, right? I drove them, all three wailing to the ships, tied them down under their rowing benches, and called to the rest, "All hands aboard! Come, clear the beach, and no one taste the lotus, or you lose your hope of home." Filing into their places by the rowlocks, my oarsmen dipped their long oars in the surf, and we moved out again on our seafaring. So Odysseus found that his friends had eaten this plant. And so he went and he got all of them, all three, wailing to the ships where he had to tie them down. And then he made sure to tell everyone not to eat the plant or they lose all hope of home. So, what does this show us about Odysseus and who he is? Also, I'll have some questions focusing on the lotus flower. How can we see that in today's world? We're so focused on one thing that we lose contact of other things as well. We're focused on our pleasure, but then we forget about the world. So we'll talk about that some more. But so that is the reading for the first couple pages. Next time on Miss Neal's Chat, we will be talking about the Cyclops. All right, see you soon.